My husband found out about my wild college days, and now he's serving me with divorce papers. I'll try and keep this short. We've known each other for 5 years, been married for 2, and up until last weekend, things were perfectly fine. Maybe once in a while, we'd bicker about money or something, but 99% of the time we were happy together. While out last weekend for a friend's birthday, a now ex-friend of mine told my husband about a relationship I had in college. My husband knew about my college boyfriend, but obviously, I didn't share intimate details about our life. Well, it came out that I used to engage in threesomes with him and his male roommate, probably 12 to 15 in total. But all my husband knows is that it was more than once. College was a totally different time in my life. I was drinking every weekend, doing recreational substances every month, partying, and having casual flings, just like everyone else at that age. It was a head in the clouds, live for today lifestyle that I thankfully grew out of. I look back on those years with a lot of regrets, and not just about my sexual life. I mean, it was 10 plus years ago. I'm a totally different person now. Regardless, I know my husband sees me in a totally different light. He hasn't slept in our bed since he found out, and he's barely spoken to me all week. I'm so scared he'll divorce me. I'm walking on eggshells, just trying to stay out of his way while he works through this. I really want to sit him down and clear the air. I just don't know where to begin. I feel like one slip of the tongue in our relationship could be completely over. I know I'm not a good person for keeping this from him, so please, don't lecture me. It was a chapter of my life I thought I'd closed for good. It was my one secret, and I honestly debated telling him about it, but came to the conclusion that no positive outcome could come from it. TLDR, my husband, a 34-year-old male of 2 years, found out some of my 31-year-old female sensual exploits in college. He has barely talked to me since he found out, and I'm afraid our relationship might be finished over something I did 10 years ago, before I even knew him. Relevant comments: people don't change that much. It could be that he just simply knows more about how you view sex now, and it may not be compatible with his own views. Pulling a three-way with 2 dudes 10 to 15 times, that's a whole lot of sucking and effing. It shows a lot about how you like to be treated and what you crave. I honestly don't blame him for being creeped out about that. Most times, there were substances or alcohol involved. It's not something I'd ever want to do at this age. Like I said, it was a lifetime ago. Is your husband upset that you used to be sensually adventurous because he has a problem with it? Or is it because you are not sensually adventurous with him? And I don't just mean having threesomes. I mean fun, passionate sex. He's never complained about our sex life. I didn't want to go into explicit detail, but people are asking, and it's an anonymous account. So here it goes. My main limitation is that I won't do anal, which I know he enjoys. It's just not pleasurable and often painful for me. I don't like him coming on my face. Being in me is fine, and not that he's ever asked. I'm done with group sex for good. Honestly, I don't think you've done anything wrong. And if this is something that occurred when he wasn't in your life whatsoever and is a deal breaker for him, then you are better off. He's being a childish idiot about it. The past was meant to stay in the past, and I don't believe you were obligated to talk to him about your sensual exploits with previous partners. The way he is acting is ridiculous. I understand he may be bothered by it, but wow, handle it like a man, dude, and not better off without him. This is the man I love. We've built a life together. A divorce would completely ruin my life. How did her husband find out the information? He was talking to an old friend of mine on a night where we were all drinking. My friend claims it was a drunken slip of the tongue, but she has a history of pulling crap like this, and I am 100% done with her. No, I no longer consider her a friend. I'm looking to save my marriage and don't want to discuss this with friends or family. Update: as of this morning, we still hadn't slept in the same bed or spoken more than 10 words to each other in passing. As I was waking up, he was walking in the front door with 2 coffees. He sat me down at our kitchen table and finally opened up to me. Basically, he feels that he was conned into the marriage, saying that he wouldn't have even dated me, let alone married me, if he'd known what he knows now. His view of me has been irreparably changed, and he no longer sees me as someone worthy of being his wife. Quoting him here, loving prick, beyond the sensual aspect. He says he no longer trusts me because I kept something this big from him our whole relationship. Nothing I could do or say could convince him that these were past mistakes and not reflective of who I am today. He wasn't angry with me. He didn't call me a SLT or anything like that. Never once raised his voice. Part of me wishes he did, although I can't exactly say why right now. It felt like I was being laid off from a job. So that's it, we are getting divorced. My supposed life partner is turning his back on me without a second thought. He didn't even have the decency to discuss it with me first. Apparently, he visited his lawyer during the week, and the process is in motion. His words. Knowing him, there is absolutely no changing his mind. My husband owns multiple businesses and wouldn't get married without a prenup. I signed it, honest to God, thinking we'd never ever have to use it. Well, he had the loving document with him this morning. He said he'd pay off the remainder of my student loans, which he isn't legally obligated to do. While I appreciate that, I am going to meet with my lawyer this week and see if the agreement can be challenged in court. We have built a life together. I gave him 5 of the best years of my life, and I've been 100% faithful to him. I don't deserve to be tossed out like a piece of trash. So that's it. My life turned upside down in the span of a week over something I did 10+ years ago before I even knew him. It's asinine. The thing is, even as I wrote the original post, in the back of my mind, I knew he was through with me. He's ended friendships and business partnerships over less. TLDR. My husband finally spoke to me and is apparently proceeding with a divorce. Some comments. I'm curious. Why are you looking to challenge the prenup in court? Do you feel that you have a right to his assets or money from his businesses, or are you just being vengeful? Are you an investor or founding member of any of these projects with him? Are you instrumental in their development and success in any material way? Don't give me this emotional support crap. The whole time you were supposedly emotionally supporting him, he was using the proceeds from his businesses to provide for you. That's the deal in a marriage. Now that the marriage is ending, the monetary support from his businesses is going to be cut off from you. He's being generous by offering to pay off your loans. It sounds like you're just being a spiteful bitch, looking to suck as much of his money as the legal system will allow. It's within her rights to contest it, and the courts will decide whether she has a case or not. Exactly when do I have to lose to protect his fragile ego? I have to start my life over at square one. I'll probably have to move in with my parents. I don't even know if I'll have a car by summer. I get why he's mad. I totally get it. He just didn't even give us a chance. He doesn't know our relationship won't work out. He didn't even try. He effing ran to his lawyer and exercised a contingency argument without even talking to me. He's taking the coward's way out, and it destroys my life in the process. I seriously don't know what the F is going on in this thread where the devoted comments are about how it's all on you because you're an effing liar. These people only read your update and assumed you hid both of those from him. I don't know either way. You did nothing wrong. If your sensual past was such a big deal for him, he should have asked you some questions, not just assumed you were some pure little angel living in a bubble, just waiting for this one specific man to come whisk you away. If having a sensual past is a deal breaker and he didn't question you, that's on him, not you. Lawyer up, make the split, and go find some guy who won't judge you for actions that happened 15 years ago and have no bearing on him whatsoever. Never said I was a virgin. We met when I was like 25. Come on, anytime I mentioned an ex-boyfriend, not sensually, just in conversation like, oh, I went to destination with an ex-boyfriend, he'd get PSY and unhappy. He never came out and said it, but I could tell it made him uncomfortable. So early on in our relationship, I made the conscious decision to stop talking about my past boyfriends completely. Story 2. For context, we've been married for 10 years, together for 14. This is the first time in our relationship that this, or anything like it, has ever happened. I've read tons of posts about women in similar situations, and I know how stupid I sound when I say that he really is an amazing guy, a loving and respectful husband, and a great father to our kids. A couple of nights ago, we were having sex. It was all normal, good, happy endings all around, that sort of thing. I'd had a couple of drinks, and it was very late, and I fell asleep shortly after we wrapped things up. Sometime later, I genuinely can't gauge how long because I was sleeping, I woke up to him inside me. It took me a while to kind of understand what was going on, and I was very disoriented from being woken up to this. I didn't react at all. I wasn't fully awake, But I was not asleep at this point either. I pretended to be asleep, hoping he'd stop. I froze, not wanting to confront him. I know this sounds incredibly stupid, too, and I'm angry at myself for not reacting more in the moment. It went on long enough that he readjusted my positioning a few times, but he did stop, and I don't believe he came. After that, he woke me up, helped get me dressed, and got me tucked in our bed. We haven't spoken about it at all. Here's the thing. I was raped by a friend earlier this year. My husband knows this, and it's been extremely difficult and traumatic. I'm in therapy and have an appointment for tomorrow. I'm doing better than I was, but this experience with my husband has me feeling all kinds of things. I feel like this was a miscommunication or a mistake between my husband and me. I don't want to lump him into the same category as my rapist, but I'm feeling gross and betrayed. I'm really not sure how to bring something like this up in a conversation with him. It's a weird, hard enough situation without even considering my past assault. I'm just at a loss here. I don't know how to talk to him about it, and I don't know if I should feel the way I do because I know he wouldn't intentionally cause me harm. I woke up to my husband having sex with me, which brought up feelings from an assault earlier this year. Edit. Hopefully, I'm allowed to add something here. Different subs have different rules. There are too many comments saying the same thing, so I'm just going to write it here. If you and your partner have an agreement and consent to do this, cool, love that for you. My husband and I do not. So please, for the love of God, stop saying I should be fine with it because in your partnership you're fine with it. It's not the same. Consent is key. He was awake. He woke me up after, which implies he was already awake. He does not have epilepsy. If he did have epilepsy, it's still assault because of lack of consent. Relevant comments. I have a question, not to discredit anything that you're feeling. Did he absolutely think you were asleep the whole time? Fair question. To the best of my understanding, I'd say he either thought I was asleep and went ahead with it, or he knew I was awake and wasn't into it, but he kept going anyway. I was also face down, not sure if that matters. This situation is extremely out of character for our relationship, so I genuinely don't know what to think. Was this situation the first time it has happened to Opie? Yes, this is the first time. I plan on talking to my therapist to help me formulate what I want to say. It's just a very weird and confusing situation. Opie should talk with her husband about how she was feeling about this. Can't say that's ever happened to us before. There are times one of us has initiated, mostly kissing, while the other is asleep, and after that, we have sex or the other person declines, so we go back to sleep. I've never woken up to full-on sex and haven't done it to him ever. Update. I'm not even sure why I'm doing an update, only that I have no one to talk to about this. My friends are all friends with my husband. Their husbands are close friends with mine. I don't even know how to talk about this. I was able to see my therapist yesterday, who is lovely and helpful. She gave me some good ideas for how to talk to my husband about it, and helped talk me through my feelings. One thing she said that stuck out to me was something like, I'm reacting like this because I'm meeting you where you're at with this, not because I don't think this is very serious. She said it much better than me. The gravity of it is setting in now, which I was anticipating given my recent history. I talked to my husband last night. I think I did quite well, and was able to get the points across that I wanted to in a way I wanted to. I never felt unsafe or threatened. I started by asking him how many times we'd had sex that night. This look flashed across his face, and something in me went, okay, here we go. I'm not sure best how to format this, so I'll do bullet points. He said we were talking after sex the first time when I challenged that repeatedly. He said I was making noises in my sleep. I asked him if he was touching me sensually at that point, and he said he didn't know. He said he thought I was willing. I asked him why he didn't stop when I wasn't reacting, participating, or engaging with him, and he didn't have an answer. He kept saying he thought I was into it. I asked him why he thought I was willing when he had to keep repositioning me. He didn't have an answer. For the next bit, I guess as I elaborate on the repositioning thing, I'm sorry, but I think it'll clarify things. This actually makes me sick to my stomach to type out and think about. I was face down, flat on my stomach, usually during SX, and that's a similar position. The receiver is bracing themselves, pushing back, holding themselves in place. Because I was not doing any of that, I kept sliding forward on the bed, and he'd have to pull me back into him. This happened 3 to 4 times. He says he's very sorry and didn't know it was not consensual. He feels creepy and gross, which is where I said, yeah, well, it was creepy and gross, like he broke my trust and doesn't know how to fix it. He asked how I was doing, and I said, bad. He said I should know he wouldn't do anything to hurt me, and I had to keep pointing out that, well, yes, he did, in the moment. I don't believe he thought, perfect, she's vulnerable, and I'm going to RP her. I think he wanted to have sex and didn't assess, realize, or respond quickly to the fact that I wasn't awake. I really don't know where that leaves me, to be honest. I almost wish it was just purely intentional, because then I wouldn't feel so conflicted and like I'm making him into this bad guy. If you made it this far, thanks for reading. I'm not sure I'll update again. Also, I didn't realize I wasn't allowed to post a link to my previous post, so it's been removed. Edit once again. So cool that you and your partner have this D/dynamic that you discussed and both consented to beforehand. Not to judge on anyone's kink, my husband and I do not have this arrangement, so please stop saying I should be fine with it because you're fine with it in your partnership. Relevant comments. Does the OP believe she has been RP'd or assaulted? Yeah, I believe it's RP'd, and I can feel myself reacting the same way I did earlier in the year when my friend did it to me. It's not good. I just have no idea what to do next. It's interesting that you say that because, in the first conversation, I didn't use that word. I said I felt violated and kept saying I was asleep and wasn't conscious for most of it. He said he was sorry and that he thought the sex was consensual. In the second conversation last night about it, he was getting upset, frustrated, and said he didn't want this to fester and for me to get depressed about it. I was shocked and straight up said, I feel like this because I feel like you RP'd me, and he freaked out. I thought RP was implied from our first conversation, but I intentionally mentioned it in the second. It was a much different reaction. I didn't ask him if he'd done it before because things are really tense, and it didn't feel like a good time. All I can say is that I don't think he's done it before. We're in our 30s and have been together a long time. His previous girlfriends were from back in high school. I think he's starting to get that it's serious, but I think he's mostly mad at me for accusing him of this. OP's thoughts on her husband being horrified, but she might have been a victim of domestic violence. I do think he was horrified, but he did start defending himself first, which feels crappy to me. I truly don't know where to go from here. I don't feel like a victim of domestic violence, but then I see how it all looks written down, and it looks so bad. Was Opie sure she wasn't substance impaired when this happened? I'm confident I wasn't. I opened my own drinks too, so there was no chance of tampering. It had been a very busy couple of days. I was tired. We'd had sex already, and it was late, so I think I just fell asleep. Update. Thank you everyone for all the supportive comments. I wrote my first post just to yell into the void, and I didn't really expect anyone to answer back. My husband and I have had a few conversations. The first one went well, which I outlined in my last post. The second one, the next day, did not go well. He got angry and defensive, and maybe I would too if someone accused me of something. I don't know. He asked over and over again why I waited so long, 3 days, to tell him. I told him I waited so I could process my thoughts and feelings more, and so I could talk with my therapist. He told me he didn't want this to fester and for me to get depressed over it, which felt so dismissive and hit me like a slap in the face. I said, I feel like this because I feel like you are pushing me away. He didn't take that well and kept saying he wasn't that kind of person and that I should know him better than that. He accused me of being too drunk to remember things properly. I had 2 light beers over the course of 4 hours, which is not at all a problem for me. I asked him how much he'd had, and he said he didn't know. The conversation was getting heated, and I asked for some space. He was headed to bed anyway, so I was waiting for him to leave. He didn't like that I was ending the conversation, and I had to ask him maybe 5 to 6 times before he finally went to bed. That whole conversation made me feel very stressed and panicky. The third conversation was last night, and I kept it short because I wanted to be alone. He apologized for how he reacted, saying sorry and that he'd never intentionally do anything to hurt me. I thanked him and explained why I wasn't happy with how he reacted. I asked him how the encounter ended because I realized I actually have no idea. He said it was over when he came, so that was horrifying to me. He reiterated that he thought I was awake and that he has no explanation for what happened. Frankly, I'm insulted because you're telling me I usually feel like an unconscious person. That's a joke. I'm actually crying. I read a comment thread yesterday that said, sometimes genuinely messing up has genuine consequences. I felt a lot of relief reading that because even if it was an accident, I still feel traumatized. I don't have to forgive him or sweep it under the rug because he said it was an accident. Thanks for reading and thanks for the support. I don't think I would have had the confidence to challenge his version if it weren't for you guys. Edit once again. Just because you have a free use or CNC dynamic in your relationship does not mean I should have it in mine. F right off with that. Relevant comments. OP's husband accusing her of being drunk to remember anything from what happened. Exactly, him accusing me of being too drunk doesn't actually lessen his guilt. I've said this before, but I feel like people have this idea of what RP is, and always by a violent stranger in a dark alley. I've talked a lot with my therapist about this too, and RP is so much more nuanced than what's typically portrayed on TV or headline-grabbing stories in the news. He's trying so hard to skirt blame because he can't see himself as one of the bad guys. He suggested maybe I was too drunk to remember, but at the very most, I was a tiny bit buzzed. I had 2 drinks over 4 hours, and by that time, another 1 to 2 hours had passed. But yet, either way, if he thought I was too drunk, he shouldn't have been having sex with me. Hearing him say that made me sick to my stomach, just disgusting. It made my adrenaline spike. Update. I, 32-year-old female, and my husband, 34-year-old male, have been together almost 15 years, married 10. I'm going to try to keep this concise, but the whole thing is in my PO history. Last week, he had sex with me while I was asleep. He believed I was awake and participating consensually. He's very remorseful and upset at having misinterpreted the situation and it having hurt me so badly. I was raped earlier this year by a friend, and this situation with my husband is bringing up and compounding a lot of that trauma. I know how this all looks on paper. Up until this point, he's been an incredible husband and father, loving, caring, supportive, and we had an active sex life. The problem is that this has shattered my trust, and if I'm being honest, some of my love for him. I look at him, and I feel angry and disgusted. I'm sad at what happened and sad for what I feel like our relationship has lost. I want him to comfort me, but I can't be touched by him. I see a therapist regularly, but he does not. I'm reaching out, hoping that someone can offer advice or has been through something similar. Additional info. I'm really hoping to hear from couples who have experienced a similar situation or miscommunication. I don't think he meant to hurt me, and now I'm in a situation where I have no one to talk to and no one in my life who's experienced anything like this. Do you think I can talk to my couple friends about how my husband accidentally RP'd me? I'm staring down the barrel at the end of my decade-long marriage and being a single mom. I'm grasping at straws. I'm not going to apologize for trying to find answers or words of wisdom. Relevant comments. Why did he believe you were awake and participating? I've asked him that question dozens of times, and he can't answer it, so I'm really not sure. All I know is that I woke up at some point during. Do you believe him when he tells you he thought you were awake? About 99% of me believes him. I question how it's possible not to know I was asleep, but I also know him very well. Never in a million years do I think he'd do something like this on purpose. OP on needing to give therapy. Yes, my therapist, who I see once every 2 weeks for an hour. My life is collapsing around me. I'm looking for literally anything that can help. I believe you and have no idea this is a tough one. All right, but I am keen to know truly. How can someone start having sex with someone and they are asleep? I find that quite perplexing. It sure happens, as I have heard about it many times. But if my husband even started going anywhere near me whilst I was asleep, I would wake up immediately. I'm sure of it. I'm not meaning to sound stupid or disbelieving, but I'm just a bit confused as to how this can happen. I didn't have anything on. I'm not on medication. It was really late, and I'd had an active couple of days, so I was exhausted.